Good day. Might be your morning, might be your evening, might be your afternoon, might be, I don't know, might be something else entirely. It might be the next day. Really, time zones. Right, Lucy? Lucy's chilling. How's it going? Somebody yesterday told me I need to start wearing lighter shirts so that way I do not contrast with Lucy so much. That Lucy's kind of easier to see. So I'm wearing a white shirt today. And here's Lucy. There's black print on it, but I have a lot of black T-shirts. I'm not going to be able to pull that off all the time, but I will try to pull that off when I can to the best of my ability. I hope everybody is well. I hope everybody is having a killer morning or afternoon or evening, once again, whatever it may be, where you're at. So I got to tell you guys about this because you may have already seen this online. On what day was that? Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. On Sunday, I met Bernie Sanders in Iowa. It was in Iowa City. We had a show that night in Iowa City, and we didn't even know that there was a Bernie rally. We found out later, grandmother and myself is the we I'm referring to. We found out later that there was a Bernie rally earlier that day, and it was on Iowa's campus. And which is like kind of right near the city of Iowa City. It has a very Big Ten-esque setup where it's like the campus is there and then there's the town, and it's really cool. It reminded me a good bit of Bloomington, where I went to college. I went to Indiana University, University of Iowa. Cool setup. I really dug it. And so Bernie was speaking there before our show, so we decided we should go. So we went. And it was a really cool event. You probably saw some of my clips from it. They had students speak beforehand, which was really cool. All the students did a really good job. They talked about student loan debt, and they talked about the future that they're going to be looking at, and they talked about climate change. And it was really cool. Then Bernie came up, did his thing. I've seen Bernie a couple times, and I did not shake Bernie Sanders' hand. I got to meet him, but I didn't get to shake his hand. And here's what happened. So afterwards, Bernie was kind of making his way through the crowd. There was a barrier, and people were kind of like at a concert or something. Like people had their hands out, and he was walking by, and he was shaking hands, and he was taking a selfie here and there, but he wasn't really stopping. He kind of like kept slowly moving. And so I started thinking, like, what do I want to say to the guy? It's not like I have time to ask him a question, really. I can just kind of say, hey, thanks for being the only candidate to support universal broadband. Thanks for getting facial recognition right. Whatever it be. You got one passing moment, right? It's not an interview, whatever. What do I say? And as I'm trying to think about what to say, there was a gentleman right behind me with his baby. And he really, really wanted to get that baby to Bernie. I don't know if it was a baby. I don't know. It looked like maybe like two. The kid. I'm not good with ages. The kid might have been 6 months old. I don't know. I'm not good with this stuff. But the guy was really excited, and so I gave him my spot. I was like, "Here you go. Take my spot." And so he took my spot, and Bernie, of course, posed with the picture for the baby and met the baby and stuff. And then I was sort of behind at that point. So I just figured I had one moment, so I just wished the dude a happy birthday. That's what he's like. He's just passing by. It was his birthday. I was like, hey, man, happy birthday. What are you going to do? So that's why I didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand, because people were asking me about it. People were like, you didn't shake his hand? Why didn't you shake his hand? Because I rather would give this guy a memory that he'll have for the rest of his life. His child, the child won't remember it, but the father will. And, afterwards, that father was he had a big smile on his face, and his eyes were a little watery. And I felt good for him. And for me, I don't, a handshake isn't that big of a deal to me. You know what I mean? It's neat or whatever. It was cool to just say happy birthday to the dude. I'd rather, have a sit down with him and have an interview and talk to him about issues. I'd rather do that. When someone's passing by, I wasn't going to shout some heavy thing out, or you know what I mean? So anyway, that's why I didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand. So some of you have been tweeting me. You're like, Ron, why didn't you? And I tweeted it. I was like, hey, man, I didn't know what to say in such a short passing moment. So I just wished the dude a happy birthday. Didn't know what else to say. And I didn't get to shake his hand. And that's why I decided, I was like, you know what? That guy and his child. That's plus, I mean, let's be honest. That's something everybody would prefer seeing that anyway. Let's be real here. An adorable photo with a child, or like just me being like, ah! I mean, come on. Me taking a goofy selfie with Bernie being like, well, and I didn't think I wanted to take a selfie. I was like, I don't want to take a selfie in this situation anyway. Because it's like it's passing by, there's a barricade. I'd rather just like, you know, take a selfie when I'm actually talking to the dude. But anyway, so that's why I didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand. And you know, I'd imagine he would not take that personally, as he shouldn't. That was, you know, it's like, hey, this is I don't know what being a father is like, because Lucy, our relationship is not the same thing. It's not quite the same thing. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like that was the right thing to do. So anyway, whatever. That's why I didn't shake Bernie Sanders' hand. For anyone who was wondering, you probably saw that video. That's what happened. Moving on, North Carolina GOP. Man, they played some dirty ball today. Man, here's what they did. Check out what they did. Here we go. All right. Oh, let me get back up to the headline. Trickery, deception, and lies. Governor Cooper blasts Republicans after secret vote on budget veto. So here's what happened. The governor of North Carolina, who's a Democrat, vetoed this budget bill. And Republicans didn't like that. So here's what they did. Let's go to the article here. This is from Raleigh. The North Carolina House of Representatives, this happened today, by the way, held a surprise emergency session on September 11th and voted to override Governor Roy Cooper's veto of the General Assembly's proposed budget. The vote ended up being 55-9, with only 9 Democrats out of all of them. Only 9 of the Democrats were present. Where were the rest of the Democrats? Here's where they were at. Here's the quote from Governor Cooper. For a decade, this Republican legislator elected by unconstitutional means has used tricks and bullying to starve our public schools and deny health care to 500,000 working North Carolinians. They use lies, bribes, and illegal districts because their policies damage our state and can't pass on their own merit. Today, on the 18th anniversary of 9/11, while the state was honoring first responders, Republicans called a deceptive surprise override of my budget veto. So where were the Democrats? The Democrats and the governor were at a 9/11 event. They were at a 9/11 commemorative event, and Republicans just held a secret session and voted to override this veto. Now, it does still have to go through the Senate, so we'll see what happens here. This is breaking. This literally happened this morning Eastern time. But that's what they did. And here's all the Democrats had to say about it. Look at this. So here's a quote from Deb Butler, a Democrat in Wilmington. I'm so very disappointed that the Republicans would stoop to this level. If you could have seen the smirking, the rib poking, the grinning, the thrill of victory when you have intentionally misled our leader, this is despicable behavior. This is wrong. Here's what Senator Kirk DeVere of Democrat in Cumberland. This is wrong, unethical, and not what North Carolina citizens deserve. Okay, so, and this was horrible what the Republicans did, of course. This entire event is a snapshot into what is wrong with our politics. This is what is wrong with our politics in the United States of America. The GOP is morally repulsive beyond measure. They are such a repulsive institution, it cannot even be quantified. And the Democrats are weak beyond measure. They are weak beyond comprehension. And this is a snapshot of that. Okay, imagine. Here's what they did. Now, first of all, think of the supporters of the GOP. These are rah-rah, patriotic, right? If you're not with the, if you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. And here, the GOP on 9/11 during a commemorative 9/11 event, decided to play politics and have an emergency session. Imagine if the Democrats did that. Imagine if the Democrats did that, what the GOP would do. They would be screaming at the rafters on what a disgusting, unpatriotic thing the Democrats did. And the Democrats would roll back. Like they would just cave on whatever it was. Here the GOP does that. And instead of taking the messaging that direction, how dare they on a 9/11 commemorative event where we were paying homage to the people who lost their lives and paying homage to the troops that have gone on to fight for our freedom. And they do this and they play politics. Instead, the Democrats just say, this is deceptive. How dare they? This isn't fair and we deserve better. Why not be screaming the 9/11 portion of it to the rafters? Why? Because the Democrats aren't good at messaging. Because the Democrats don't have any fight. And that's all by design. But then when people go into the voting booth, well, at least they're not as repulsive as the GOP. Yeah, the reason the GOP is able to be as repulsive as they are is because they don't have any real competition. The Democrats just rolled over and let this happen and then talked about how they were rib poking and they were grinning. Yeah, because they knew they were going to get away with it. Why wouldn't you be screaming the 9/11 aspect of it? Call them unpatriotic. Say how deceptive that was and how disrespectful that was to the first responders, how disrespectful that was to the families of those who lost their lives when the Twin Towers came down. Why wouldn't you take that path as far as the messaging here? Why? Because the Democrats are the Washington Generals of American politics. They are a parody. They're going to whine about tone, and they were rib poking. We deserve better. No, you scream at the top of your lungs. How dare they do this on 9/11? How dare they do this to the first responders? How dare they disrespect the families like this? It's not that hard. I came up with this just reading this article in real time on a live stream, and I'm a freaking comedian, not a politician. And they didn't. You don't even hear them mentioning that part. The article mentioned that part, and all the quotes from elected officials. They don't even mention that part. How dare they do this on 9/11? They don't even go there. Here, let me make sure. Let me make sure there's no. Yeah, even the tweets. They don't even. I mean, they talk about how it was wrong, of course, but they don't even take that route with it. And again, I'm not trying. It's repulsive what the GOP did. That was, of course, terrible. But, so there you go. There's a snapshot into everything that's wrong with our politics. We have two parties with power. One is repulsive beyond comprehension. One is weak beyond comprehension. So weak that they lose to that repulsive beyond comprehension party. And then they really do nothing about it. And they're cheated on the regular, and they do nothing about it because their gravy train doesn't stop running whether they win or lose. In fact, if progressives start winning, their gravy train might end. So there you go. There you go. You got the Democrat. They're the resistance, baby. They can't even think to pin the 9/11 part on the GOP. They can't even think to do that. Wow. I mean, have you seen the other guys? Have you seen the other guys? Where else are you going to go? Don't expect better. One of those was a serious slogan, by the way, from the Democratic Party. All right. So here's some strike news. Now, Christina shares this, which by the way, that last story was shared by John. Thank you for sharing that, John. Sorry, I forgot to mention that at the beginning. That story was shared by John. This story is shared by Christina. Christina, thank you for that. And it looks like we have some strike news in California, my state of residence. I can't call it my home state because I'm not from California originally, right? You can't really. I mean, it's my home. It's where I live. But I was not born in California. Anyway, all right. Here's why 47,000 grocery strikers in California may soon go on strike. Let's see what's going on here. Some 47,000 supermarket workers at Ralph's, Albertsons, and other grocery chains in Southern California are closer to starting the largest private sector strike since 74,000 General Motors employees walked off the job in 2007. Here's what's happening in California. Union officials representing cashiers, stockers, and clerks at Ralph's, owned by Kroger. And I didn't know that, actually. I did not know that Ralph's was owned by Kroger. Interesting. Okay. And employees at Albertson and its Vons and Pavilion chains have been negotiating new 3-year contracts with the company since their contracts expired in March. California workers at more than 500 stores are demanding higher pay and a contract that protects their retirement and health benefits. Talks between the companies and union leaders representing more than 500 stores in the region are ongoing, but some Ralph's workers in recent weeks have started to protest outside local stores to raise pressure on the company. Next week, workers representing... Now, this is actually from last week. So they're going to be voting very soon. And this would not be the first strike by California grocery workers. In 2003, more than 70,000 workers at 859 stores in the state walked picket lines for nearly 5 months. Okay, so let's see if there's an update to this. There might be an update to this right now. We're going to find out in real time. All right. So here's an update. Here's what happened. This is from the LA Times. Check this out. Grocery strike probably averted. Contract includes pay raises, pension bump. Oh, what do you know? The looming threat of a grocery store strike throughout Southern California appeared to be dissolving Monday, and that would be yesterday. As workers, 2 days ago. Today's Wednesday. Sorry, so I did not stream on Monday because I was traveling back. So now my timeline's all screwed up. I feel like today is Tuesday when it in fact is Wednesday. So that was 2 days ago, not yesterday. Today is Wednesday. I am Ron. This is Lucy. That's a siren. Can you hear it? Can you hear that siren? It's really freaking loud. I don't know if you can hear it. There's a siren going on outside. Hopefully everyone's okay. All right. Looming threat of a grocery store strike throughout Southern California appeared to be dissolving Monday, 2 days ago, as workers began voting on a new employment contract that seems to appease all parties. Ralph's, Vons, Pavilions, and Albertson workers are voting through Wednesday on the deal brokered over the weekend between the supermarket chains and the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. All right. So it looks like, all right, so here's what a grocery store clerk named Jesus Ortega said. This is the best contract I've seen in 20 years. So what do you know? What do you know? They say, hey, we're going to strike. If you don't treat us right, we're going to go on strike. You better be prepared for it, for we're striking. And it looks like they're going to get what they want. Now, this is still ongoing. We should know more today. They're voting today. Because, again, today's Wednesday. They're voting today. So we'll follow up on this. But it looks like the workers are going to get what they want. Why? Because they said we're going to strike if you don't give us what we want. And it's not just what they want. It's what they deserve. They deserve higher wages. They deserve their retirement and their pensions to be protected and their health care benefits. So good for those workers. And I hope that the projections are accurate and they get exactly what they are calling for and exactly what they should be doing. So we got some stuff coming out of California today. Here's something else that happened in California that it looks like this is a I just saw the headline on this and it looked very intriguing. So I don't understand exactly everything that's going on yet, but let's take a look because this caught my attention. California passes a landmark bill to remake gig economy. So this happened in Sacramento. California legislators approved a landmark bill on Tuesday, that was yesterday, that requires companies like Uber and Lyft to treat contract workers as employees, a move that could reshape the gig economy and that adds fuel to a years-long... Fun there. Adds fuel. Do you dig it? Do you get it? Adds fuel to a years-long debate over whether the nature of the work has become too insecure. The bill passed 29-11 and a vote in the state Senate and will apply to app-based companies despite their efforts to negotiate an exemption. California's Governor Gavin Newsom endorsed the bill this month and is expected to sign it after it goes to the state assembly in what is expected to be a formality. Under the measure, which would go into effect January 1st, workers must be designated as employees instead of contractors if a company exerts control over how they perform their task or if the work is part of a company's regular business. So here's the thing. All right, let's keep reading here. The bill's passage, which codifies and extends a 2018 California Supreme Court ruling, threatens gig economy companies like Uber and Lyft. The ride-hailing firms, along with app-based services that offer food delivery, home repairs, and dog walking services, have built their businesses on inexpensive independent labor. Uber and Lyft, which have hundreds of thousands of drivers in California, have said contract work provides people with flexibility. They have warned that recognizing drivers as employees could destroy their businesses. It will have major reverberations. Okay. So here's the thing. There's no reason. First of all, a couple initial reactions to this. Just because someone's designated as an employee, they could still get screwed over. It's not like that is some blanket protection there that, oh, you're an employee now, you're fine. Employees are getting screwed over all the time. Second of all, I don't see how this could actually disrupt Uber or Lyft's model. Now, what they're going to try to do, what Uber and Lyft will try to do is they'll try to put this price on the consumer. They'll try to say, well, because we have to pay employee taxes now and everyone's treated as an employee, your rides are going to cost more. It should not be that way. You know why? Because the owner of Uber, the CEO of Uber, recently bought a $72 million house. That's why. Well, the people who build that wealth for him are sleeping in their cars. So that's what's going on here. There's no reason why the people who build and generate the wealth for Uber and Lyft, if there were no drivers, Uber and Lyft wouldn't work. We know this, right? If nobody drove for it, it wouldn't work. If you log on to that Lyft and there's no cars available to get you from point A to point B, or the nearest car is way far away, guess what? Uber and Lyft ain't going to be around very long. So the people generate this wealth for the CEO. The CEO should not be buying $72 million homes while the people who generate that wealth are sleeping in their cars. That's absolutely ridiculous because they need the drivers. We have this weird mentality in the United States that somehow our jobs are an act of charity by our employer. That somehow we shouldn't ask for more. We should be thankful we have that. Don't expect the Walton family to treat you fairly. Don't expect a corporation to treat you fairly. You're lucky you have a job. Just be thankful they're giving you a job. And if you don't like your job, quit. Guess what? That is backwards because you know those people at the top. Oh, and why do we subscribe to these messages? Because that's what the corporate media pumps into our brains. And who owns the corporate media? Elite corporations who are screwing over their employees. You see how it's a big club? You see how it's a big cycle of garbage? Hey, we're the corporations screwing over people. Tell them they should just be thankful for their jobs. Ha 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 ha. We own the media. Guess what? They need you. Your employer needs you. Do you need your job? Of course, we all need a job. Sure, everybody needs a job. All right. Well, not everybody, but you get the idea. But your employer needs you. They need your labor. They need your output. If you quit, they would have to replace you. So your job, your livelihood is not a charitable act from your employer. It is an agreement that you give them your output. You give them hours of your life. You work hard. And in exchange, you should get a living wage. You should get compensated fairly. And you should be able to have your basic needs met. And you should get health care. Unfortunately, we have an employer-based healthcare system. It shouldn't be that way, and hopefully it changes. But until it does, you should be given benefits. So, And as far as the ins and outs of this bill, look, Uber and Lyft, they're not going to do something stupid to price themselves out of this. So if this forces them to treat the people who drive for them better and to share the wealth a little bit, which they can do many times over, good. And if this wrecks their business model, something new will pop up. And hopefully, you know what might pop up instead? A cooperative. Imagine if there was an alternative to Lyft and Uber that was a worker-owned cooperative. I'd sign up for that tomorrow. In fact, something might exist already that's like that. I mean, if it is, email me because I don't know about it if it does. And maybe it does. So maybe, just maybe, a cooperative will pop up where everyone's treated as an employee and is in tune with this law. So I'm glad there's laws out there to put pressure on Uber and Lyft to start treating their drivers better. And their drivers deserve to make a living wage. Their drivers deserve to be compensated fairly for what they do. Because if there weren't any drivers, it would all go bye-bye. It would all go bye-bye. And there's no reason. I mean, there's plenty of employees out there that have flexible work abilities that make their own hours. That happens all the time. So this Uber and Lyft going, well, this would wreck our model. We give them flexibility. There's plenty of employee designated jobs that have flexibility that are, part-time. There's no reason why you can't just have a W-2 for that and keep track of it and give them a W-2 and give them a wage that is a living wage. And if they only drive for a couple hours a week, well, that's the amount that they get. They get compensated for those hours. And if they drive more, well then, maybe it's a full-time job or maybe it's a part-time job. There's nothing wrong with it being a part-time thing. There's nothing wrong with it being a supplemental thing. It's just that supplemental thing should be compensated fairly. How does that hurt your business, Uber and Lyft? I'll tell you, it doesn't. It just forces you to actually compensate your drivers fairly, which is a good thing. Good on you, California. All right. So this is from Josephine. And then actually, you know what? We're going to close with that. Never mind. Hold tight, Josephine. Instead, first we're going to go to Linus. We're going to go to Linus first. Then we're going to go to Josephine. This is a little disturbing, but hopefully nothing to worry about quite yet. Here's what's going on here. Japan may dump radioactive Fukushima water into the Pacific in only option of disposal. All right, let's see what's going on here. The operator of the ruined Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant may have to dump huge amounts of contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean. The company no longer has room to store it, said Yoshihiko Harada, Japan's environmental minister, today. Okay, so 8 years after an earthquake and tsunami triggered Japan's worst nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, which is 160 miles north of Tokyo, they've continued to pump water into cool fuel cores. So it's used and it's contaminated, and the water is then put into storage. And now they're not sure what they're going to do with it because they have too much of it. So TEPCO has collected more than 1 million metric tons of contaminated water used to cool the nuclear reactor. The only option will be to drain it into the sea and dilute it, said Harada at a news briefing in Tokyo. The whole government will discuss this, but I would like to offer my simple opinion. So far, this is just one dude's opinion. This is just one dude's take on it. But who is that dude? Japan's environment minister. So this is their environmental minister who's saying, well, he might just have to dump this into the ocean. Oh, and by the way, how much water? He doesn't say. He doesn't say exactly how much is going to be dumped into the ocean. He's just saying, hey, we might dump a bunch of contaminated water into the Pacific. The article mentions dumping the waste into the ocean will anger local fishermen and Japan's neighbors. You think? You think they might not be fans? You know who else might not be fans? Anybody who is worried about our planet. They too might not be fans. Anybody who is worried about the planet, probably not fan. Hey, we're going to dump a bunch of contaminated nuclear water into the ocean because we just don't want to store it anymore. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, right now, the government needs to discuss it, But the environment minister is saying, well, we might just dump it into the ocean. Sleep tight. Doesn't that give you the assurance? What does our environmental minister say? Well, I might just dump it into the ocean. Fishermen won't like it. Why won't fishermen like? Well, because they fish, and what's going to be? Well, the fish will be contaminated. You're okay with this? Yeah, the water's got to go somewhere. I mean, where are we gonna? My apartment is full. I'll tell you, my apartment's full, and my other idea was I thought we'd put it in the local community swimming pool, but a bunch of parents got all outraged. They're like, oh, and I'm like, it's good for their immune systems. Come on, and they were like, no, and I'm like, all right, well, if you guys are gonna be some purists about it, I guess we'll just dump it into the ocean, and it can get in our food supply when people fish. I don't know. I mean, that's my take. You got better ideas? I'm saying ocean. Or swimming pool for the kids. What do you guys think? You're the environmental minister, right? Yeah. What's your gig? All right. Wow. Yeah, that doesn't sit well. I mean, that's pretty. So here's the end of the article here. Lucy, are you concerned? Lucy's getting up. She's like, oh man, I don't want that to happen. I'm a cat. I like eating fish. The Japanese government has spent over $320 million to an underground barrier to prevent groundwater from reaching the 3 damaged nuclear reactors. However, the wall has only reduced the flow of groundwater from about 500 metric tons to around 100 metric tons per day. So couldn't they just build more of that stuff and then not have to worry about putting contaminated water in the ocean? Couldn't they just extend their efforts there? I'm sure there's some space issues going on here, but I feel like there should be a better solution here, or maybe figure out a more sustainable way to go about energy here. Now, some of this was because a result of earthquakes and tsunamis. So some of this is not just business as usual. It was triggered by environmental catastrophes, but still, I feel like they got to figure out a better solution here. I don't like the dump it in the ocean solution. All right. So this is an interesting thing here that Josephine shares, and this is happening. What a setup. This is happening. So here's something. This is a show where I get my news. So the stuff that we talk about is happening. How about those apples, huh? Happening stuff. All right. A conservative network is filing a $10 million defamation lawsuit against Rachel Maddow. So Rachel Maddow has, and we talk about this on the show some, what a fall from grace she has had in the past few years. I used to consider her by far the best part of MSNBC. The reporting she was doing 5-6 years ago was, I thought, really stellar for the most part. And you can, hey, if you dig far enough back on YouTube, you can find videos where I would kind of refer to her as sort of the diamond in the rough in that network. Past few years, she has changed, largely because of Russiagate, which she did for her ratings. It helped her ratings. It's good to have a scapegoat. It's good to have a boogeyman. It's good to kind of have a mystery novel in real time going on. Even though it helped Trump in the long run, it helped Trump. It led to no consequences. It led to no evidence of much of anything. We all know what it all led to. And it helped Trump. It made him more powerful than ever before. But on many times on MSNBC, they would accuse people of being Russian assets, accuse people of having affiliations with RT that they didn't have. They did that to Jill Stein. They said Jill Stein had a show on RT. A simple Google search reveals she does not. She never did. It was just a straight up lie. And we mentioned then, I was like, she would have, if she wanted to, she could sue them for defamation. So here's what's going on. A conservative news network decided to take action. So what's going on here? Conservative News Network files a $10 million defamation lawsuit against Rachel Maddow. The lawsuit filed in San Diego federal court by the owners of One American News Network calls Maddow's on-air statements utterly and completely false. The San Diego-based owners and operators of the conservative One American News Network filed a $10 million defamation lawsuit today against MSNBC and political commentator Rachel Maddow for saying on air the network really literally is paid Russian propaganda. Okay, so the lawsuit, they're saying that that's not true. They're an American company. So Maddow made the statements during a July 22nd segment of our show in which she cited a Daily Beast article stating that an OAN on-air reporter was on the payroll for the Kremlin. Hearing Network's court papers say the reporter, Christian Rouse, is originally from the Ukraine, started his journalism career writing articles for Sputnik News, which is affiliated with the Russian government. According to Hearing Networks, Rouse was nearly a freelancer. Lucy, I can't see the article. Here, sit on my lap. So this person was just a freelancer for Sputnik. All right. So they demanded a retraction. This OAN demanded a retraction of her network. Included in supporting documents attached to the suit, a letter from the lawyer for NBC Universal News Group who claims that Maddow's use of the word literally is the kind of figure of speech that connotes opinion. That's a horrible defense. Okay, all right, so the plaintiffs disagree. All right. So here's why so they're calling it a figure of speech. She said that this is paid Russian propaganda. They're saying, oh, that's a figure of speech. That's a horrible defense. First of all, that's morally disgusting to say. That's a figure of speech. When there's reporters we don't like or news we don't like, we just call it Russian propaganda. It's a figure of speech. It's just synonymous for something we don't like. Imagine if they said that about anything else. Yeah, whenever we don't like reporting from somewhere, we just call it, we say, oh, that's Telemundo. But whenever we saw, oh, that's BBC propaganda. That's English propaganda. That's Scottish propaganda right there. That's just what we say about stuff we don't like. We call it insert country we're scapegoating here propaganda. That's a great president. Oh, it's a figure of speech. Come on. Well, it's actually kind of xenophobic. Yeah, but it's a figure of speech. It's Russia. Come on. USA. That's a horrible defense. For that reason, another reason why that's a horrible defense. So now, again, this is a conservative news network. Chances are, if I watch that network, I would agree on virtually nothing they're saying. That's besides the point. This has nothing to do with what type of news network they are or aren't. This is in no means a defense of one news network or another. This is just simply looking at the issue. When you sue somebody for defamation, and when defamation is coming up in the sphere, what that basically means is that they knowingly had a smear about you, and that could potentially be harmful. So this they're like, hey, we're an American company. You called us Russian propaganda. You said that we're funded by this or that, and that's just not true. We're an American company. That's defamation. Now, and I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but in a defamation lawsuit, you have to prove intention. I'm fairly certain, you have to prove that the person knowingly deceived the public. So based on everything that's available so far, that will be tough to prove because they're basing this off of, they cited a Daily Beast article where it mentioned that this person was paid by the Kremlin. Now, it doesn't look like they're saying it was past tense here. So they took some liberties here. Really, literally, is paid Russian propaganda. That's what Maddow said about the whole network. It can be traced back to one of their journalists started their career. They're from the Ukraine. They started their career freelancing for Sputnik, and they referenced a Daily Beast article who said that they're just on the payroll for the Kremlin. Now, did they say it past tense? Those are all questions there. But in this particular case, you have to prove malicious intent. You have to prove that Rachel Maddow knowingly deceived the American people and that her words were, intentionally deceitful. If she said something like, yeah, some of the reporters were on the Kremlin payroll at one point, that technically you couldn't do anything to her for that. That's a true statement. If she used it in present tense, knowingly, then that's a different story. So what I'm saying is, looking at this objectively, it seems like they're going to have a difficult time proving defamation beyond a shadow of a doubt. Rachel Maddow could say, well, I saw this article. This person used to, they used to write for Sputnik. So it's technically but the fact that the defense is, oh, it's a figure of speech. That's not a very good defense. Oh, that's a figure of speech. It's an opinion. It's an opinion that something is paid for by the Russian government when it isn't, and it's an American thing. That's an opinion. No, that's called you're just making stuff up. And that's a figure of speech to just call something Russian when you don't like it. When you don't like it, you just call it Russian. That's a figure of speech. That's not a figure of speech. Like, oh, it's a figure of speech. No. That's xenophobic and hateful. That's what that is. And MSNBC's been doing that. What's interesting is I mentioned the Jill Stein thing. I think Jill Stein, had she gone that route, would have had an easier time with a defamation lawsuit than this particular, for instance. Because they just straight up said, like, oh, yeah, she's on RT and she has a show on RT. She doesn't. That was just a straight up, they just straight up made that up. But in this case, they have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Maddow intentionally misled people and intentionally deceived. Did she or didn't she? In this particular, for instance, I don't know for sure. Maybe she thought this person was still on the Kremlin payroll. Maybe she thought, I don't know. I mean, based on the way she's behaved over the past couple years, yeah, it just looks like a lazy aside that she shouldn't have said, that she didn't think through. But as far as the court is concerned, they're going to have to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that she deliberately tried to mislead. And they might have a hard time doing that, again, because of the fact that this person was on the Kremlin payroll at one point. Maddow can just say, well, I was just, there was this article that said they were paid by the Kremlin. So I just, made that connection. And so anyway, but we'll see what happens here. I have a feeling it'll just get settled out of court. And again, you don't have to, this is not defending that network. This is not, this is certainly not defending Rachel Maddow or MSNBC. It's very possible that everybody involved here is a bad guy. Very, very possible. So there you go. We'll see what happens there. Let me see what you guys are saying about this. And that is how we'll end the show today. Let me get over to the chat. Which, by the way, shout out to our sponsors, ET.com, ZHITEA.com. They're T kind of rules. Thoughts on cold brew coffee? I love it. I love a good cold brew. I had a fantastic cold brew in Minneapolis recently when I was over there. By the way, guys, tour dates, I got them. We're coming to Australia. Australia in November. Get your tickets now. Josephine, not proved beyond shadow of a doubt. That's criminal, not civil standard. Okay. All right. So it's not proved yet. But they have to prove malicious intent, though. Or they have to prove, like they have to say that, we are applying contemporary standards, that this was an intentional smear, that they knew that this was not true what they were saying. They said it anyway. They have to, I'm pretty certain they have to prove that to win a defamation lawsuit, or they have to, at least, whatever the verbiage is. And they might have a hard time doing that. They might not. They might win. I don't know. They might totally win. But, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure they have to prove that she knowingly lied. She knew that there was nothing, there were no connections. She knowingly, she might have known the whole thing about the, the person at one point writing for Sputnik, but she knew that was in the past. She knew that they were just from there, and she knowingly said, this is Russian propaganda. So that's what I'm saying. But I see that, yeah, shadow of a doubt refers to something else. Anyway, guys, tour dates. And Josephine, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. You help keep this show on the air. Very much appreciated. Guys, Guys, tour dates, I got them. November, Australia, Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. Grandma and myself are coming. Do not wait. Get your tickets now. Don't wait. Get your tickets now. RonPlacone.com for tickets. And hey, if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/RonPlacone. We do a patrons only stream once a week where we do a stream just for the patrons where we can chat it up. You guys can send me ideas, and we do a patrons only stream. We also do post-show hangs where after I'm done on the stream here, you can hang out with me in the green room, an green room, if you will. You also get my album in its entirety, all kinds of exclusive content, and you help me expand the show. I want to do more interviews. I want to do more segments. I want to get that cooking segment started that we talked about. And I could use your help to do so. So patreon.com/RonPlacone. If you are interested, /able/ you get the idea. Guys, thank you so much. We will be back tomorrow. Same time, same channel, right here. You know the drill. 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific time. And in the meantime, Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.